Good night. May the horse be with you.
Nobody did it better. Harvey Pack passing away this week, and he will be remembered by so many. He has been remembered by so many, myself included. May the horse be with you. And he tossed the program. He did that at the end of all of his shows, and I'm joined now by somebody who knew him very, very well. He was very close to him. That is John Preachy. You can go to horseraceinsider.com and read John's letter to Harvey Pack. It is wonderful. It is an open love letter to Harvey Pack. Celebrate a life worth celebrating. It's fantastic, and John is with me now. John, good morning.
Mike, good morning to you. And as I was listening to you just now, you made me emotional all over again. I'm not quite sure Harvey would like that.
Yeah, he probably wouldn't. But, boy, I say nobody did it better. And, John, I think I told you when I asked you to join me on the program that show, and Harvey had so many unbelievable programs, but I remember watching Harvey and I remember seeing you, and that had such a big influence on me falling in love with the sport of thoroughbred racing. It just the way he presented the game was unparalleled.
Well, Michael, I don't know if I should say thank you or apologize. No, he made being a horse player a good thing, and he made small C celebrities of a lot of us. Yeah, the first nightly replay show kind of ever. Well, not kind of. It was. OTB came along in the early 70s in New York, and this show went on. Harvey went on the air at NBC. I think it was 1974. As he was able to, he was a TV and radio critic, so I guess he knew he had the right context to call, and he pitched the idea of doing a race recreation show on radio, because racing now was a big deal in New York because of New York City OTB. And what he did was get the Daily Racing Form charts, and he got a mental picture of what the race was, and he called it, adding some words, subtracting some others, because it was so early. Some of the things we take for granted today, Mike, just wasn't there at the time. I don't know if you knew this or remember, because I might have a few years on you, but in the early 70s, when you went to OTB to make a bet, and you would hear the race call, but that's all you would hear. There were no pictures, and everybody stared at the screen, just like my parents used to stare at the radio when the music or a show came on or whatever. So it was. The man was a visionary. I mean, there's just no other way to say it. And out of the NBC radio gig, it was so popular that Naira found him and hired him in '74. Originally as a kind of a face of Naira, he would take VIPs and such around and show them the game and so forth and so on. And he had an idea for a closed circuit show, so you could say that his cable show, the replay show, really started as an in-house closed-circuit TV handicapping thing where he would call the guys in the press box, myself included, and we would come down and pick the fifth race or the sixth race or the seventh race. And it became popular, and John Tata, who was the president or CEO, whatever, he was the head honcho at Cablevision. He was a big Harvey fan. And I got lucky for a spell there in that when I went to pick some of those horses, I don't know, I picked like maybe 5 winners in a row or something like that. And that made Harvey look good. And so Harvey kind of made me look good. And so he pitches John Tata on the program. And he calls me one day and says, listen, we're going to come down. I want to tape something. And we're going to use it as a pilot program and see if John Tata approves the idea. And fortunately for everybody, fortunately for every sports fan, John Tata said yes. Harvey was off to the races, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah, and there were so many great stories. That was one of those, but there were so many great stories, John, that you mentioned in this open love letter to Harvey Pack on your website. And again, I'll remind people, horseraceinsider.com. I highly recommend going to read this piece because I thought it was so well done. But you talk about working alongside him and how he made everybody better, but he had a unique style of kind of teaching you and bringing you along, and you had to be prepared, right?
Well, Michael, as well as anyone in the media who has a platform, whether it be radio or TV, you're doing like a half hour's worth of preparation for every 5 minutes of FaceTime, right? Or voice time, because you don't know which way you're going to go. Fortunately, it was my job when I sat alongside of him to voice over the races, tell the people what they saw and what they're about to see, what they're seeing now, and what they just saw. And then you get out, and Harvey would take you to the next race. But it was just so interesting that the thing that's, I don't know, there's so many things that you could remember and many more things that you could forget. But the tragic day then that Mike Venezia suffered a fatal injury at the racetrack at Belmont Park, and the races were canceled, immediately after learning that Mike could not be revived. It was, I don't know, I think it was a Wednesday or whatever. Anyway, it was my day to work on the show. I mean, he had a rotation of guests, Stephen Crist and so forth. And we would come, Russ Harris. And Wednesday, I guess at that time, was my day. And now it was Wednesday, and the show had to go on, and so forth and so on, and went down to the TV truck, which at that time was at the end of Belmont Park, and we talked over what we were going to do. And that day, just like every other day, Michael, was amazing, because when it was showtime, maybe I'd go down to Harvey's office and we'd sit around and chat for 10 minutes or something, and then we'd get the call, okay, take your seats and whatever. And he'd grab his program, he'd sit down and just start talking. The man did no preparation whatsoever.
Wow.
He really guided me through that show, because I was kind of shaky. I mean, I was shaken up. I mean, we weren't close, but I knew Mike, and it was just a horrible thing. And but you had to go on, so we showed some of the races. We did not show that one. We just kind of talked over what had happened, and or we played a stretch run. I don't remember exactly what we did. But we just recalled Mike's career highlights and some of his big winners and so forth and so on. And it's a day that will always stick with me because, in terms of Harvey, the man was just a flat-out genius. That's all it was, because everything that happened, the paddock clubs that he did in Saratoga, the first one was... I don't know if you remember that the racing secretary's office in Saratoga was like a building right hard by the paddock. And there was a space behind there, and that's where Harvey's office was at the time. So he would go in the back, and a couple of hundred people would show up every day. And I guess he made the joke that I told the same three jokes for 20 years. I mean, that's true. And, but as I said, the people who showed, who were there and who were regulars, like Harvey cultists or whatever, they'd sit in the front row and they'd listen to these three jokes and they'd laugh every day. And then Of course, Harvey would introduce us, and as a public handicapper, we all went on and made fools of ourselves. That's what that's what public handicappers do, right? If they don't get lucky. So it's just so much, and when I had heard, I knew he was in failing health, and you're always surprised, you're always shocked to hear, even when you're sort of anticipating something. And it was interesting, his nature. I mean, I loved him in a way that was sort of at first more professional than personal. And when I heard this news, I mean, it was as if kind of a pall was cast over me. What I guess I'm trying to say is that he had such a profound effect on my life, personally as well as professionally.
Beautifully said. Visiting with John Preachy, remembering the late Harvey Pack here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. John, the article on your website, the very last line, you say, he made us all look good even while he was making us look bad. What does that mean?
Oh, well, that was, because he would, I had suggested we created a magazine show for Dark Tuesdays called Inside Racing, where I would voice over the big races from around the country. I mean, much as they do, say, on, TVG these days or America's Day at the Races and whatnot. And I said, well, what if we did like a road to the, I guess after the Fountain of Youth one day, I said, why don't we do like a road to the Kentucky Derby thing? And and he thought about it, and he said, well, the only reason I'll do it is because the Belmont is at the end of it. And I said, well, yes, okay. So we'll do this right through the Belmont. And the first time we did it, we went on set, and Harvey started talking, and he said, "Oh no! Today's Inside Racing. We're going to introduce a new feature, and we brought with us our 3-year-old expert, John Preachy. Not that." And it's not because he thinks like a 3-year-old, or speaks like a 3-year-old. It's because he's an expert on 3-year-old horses. So that's what I meant by, making me or making any of us look good while we were looking bad. I mean, he'd make fun of us, and he'd call us out, and sometimes. On air, and sometimes we deserve it, and but you had to be ready with a quick comeback, or he'd just flay you. That would be the end of your career. But no, he made us all look good, and everybody that I knew felt that it was an honor to be part of that whole thing, because it was the start of something that horse players of today take for granted. Watching the races, heavy analysis, wagering, because wagering was still sort of in the corner. It was sort of a dark deed. Before everything became legal and so forth, and people started to understand that, hey, yeah, it's gambling, but boy, this is fun, and look at these great horses and athletes, and look at these jockeys who steer horses in narrow holes going 40 miles an hour, and unlike other sports, you just can't call a timeout. You better make a decision instantly, and he made everybody appreciate that. There were other things that Harvey did, interviews. He did some magazine shows with the late Phil Johnson, the trainer I remember, and Phil was a great storyteller. He had Woody Stevens on, and all you had to do was just say hello to Woody, and the first thing he'd tell you is remind you that he won 5 Belmonts in a row, He was, very quick to tell you that was Woody, but that was part of his charm, just like, Harvey being, irreverent with us was part of his charm. So it was, racing had a lot more color in those days than they do now, unfortunately, Michael, but that's a story for another day.
Well, John, to paraphrase the headline of your column on your website, Harvey's life was certainly a life worth celebrating, and I can't thank you enough for spending a little time this morning to help celebrate that life and to help remember somebody who meant a lot to me and meant a lot to so many people, and really appreciate the visit here this morning, my friend.
Well, thanks a lot, Michael. I enjoyed this, and to be part of something that kind of helps spread Harvey's legacy for those who maybe discovered him late or just heard the name and didn't know what it was about. It was my pleasure, and thank you very much for asking.
Thanks, Sean. All the best, my friend. Take care.